In a move many are calling questionable, we took gas station mushrooms how long ago? 45 minutes ago?
37 minutes and 40 seconds ago.
37 minutes and 40 seconds ago, we took 2 Desert Stardust mushroom gummies, which apparently produces sensory effects and joy.
Goody.
I'm cured. This is obviously just for a bit of fun and, dare I say, journalism, and we're not out here recommending anyone else do this, but we just thought, let's try these non-FDA approved mushroom gummies and see what that's about.
I was going to take umbrage with calling it journalism, but then I thought about where the bar for actual journalism these days
Come on,
and
we won't be telling any active lies.
We're not going to be spreading violent status propaganda.
Yes.
How
and
nice.
Can't put a price on that. God, I really am having sensory effects.
Yeah, I feel kind of swimmy.
It's taken me back to a time in my life where I took mushrooms. Not that I never take them. I mean, I basically never take them now, do you?
I microdose when I need it.
That's
And
how
boy,
I
have I needed
very,
it.
very microdose.
Yeah, I do less than even the recommended microdose. Like an actual microdose is like 0.025 or something.
That's kind of a lot.
And I've weighed it out, and it's like I was like, oh no, I'll do like
0.25 is not like a functional dose for me.
I want you to like blow on it at
yes,
me.
Yes, you want the LaCroix of mushrooms. Yeah. This is not the LaCroix of mushrooms. There's 4 in a pack, and it said, I just think it's so funny that it says 4 gummies, spiritual experience, guys, which we didn't want to have. And thank God, if we would have taken 4.
This whole thing is such a weird thing to me. I mean, the fact that you can just buy this at a gas station, one of the most powerful and oldest hallucinogens known to humankind, but they don't even tell you what's in it. They can tell you that there's sugar and tapioca syrup,
blend, you guys.
but they don't tell you what the active ingredient is. You have to go research that on your own.
It said on their website that it was a unique blend of legal tryptamines. So good to know.
Could be anything. Could be.
Don't worry about it.
Toad DMT. Could be Amanita muscaria, which is
not
a bit
Amanita.
neurotoxic.
We did find out that it's not Amanita because they do sell Amanita gummies.
Don't eat Amanita mushrooms unless you do all the reading and watching first and decide to, because you're just that kind of adventurer. But
it's one of those things where, like, yeah, it's obviously fucked that we're now selling spiritual experiences at the gas station, but it's also just like, well, everything's so fucked, why not just throw out some chaos? Let's see what happens. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I mean, you do have to be 21 to buy them, so I'm like, fair enough, just do it in a safe place, don't operate a vehicle.
Does seem like a step toward the Terrence McKenna or Timothy Leary dream of LSD in the water pipes.
I know, it's the closest we can get to putting it in the water, so.
Oh man, if they could see this day, know that you could just buy this in the grocery store, at the gas station. Kind of wild that just disembodied from any shamanic tradition or any instruction or context of what people might be getting into. Just like, here, take an extremely potent psychoactive chemical.
Yeah, the fact that, like, someone could just be a 21-year-old who's like, 4 spiritual experience. Because, like, if you're buying something at the gas station, you don't really think it's going to be, like, that crazy. When it says spiritual experience, what does that mean to, like, the uninitiated person? They're just like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
But, like, taking 4 of these would fuck you up.
Oh, well, I mean, that's how I feel about Delta 9. Like, sometimes I can't believe that you can just get that because, like, a sturdy edible is an intense experience.
Yeah.
And I hope people know what they're getting into. I'm kind of going against I'm in a bad place, normal, like just in the real world, not having a great time, been really anxious and shit, and just going through a lot right now. So this is just throwing up a prayer. It's like, with the world as it is, why the fuck not? Why not do a little nondescript, anonymous psychoactive compound and see if that can fix me? Seeking solace. And
I mean, it was just that this was our video idea for the week. And so I was like, yeah, let's do it. I'm willing to do it for the content because unfortunately me paying my rent depends on continuing to make content. What's going on right now is certainly more chaotic of an experience than I'm looking for on a weekday.
I still feel pretty gathered. I just, bodily, I feel kind of like...
Bodily, I feel horrible, Tanner.
Yeah.
But I could imagine I remember when mushrooms were new to me, this could be like a fun sensation to someone who it's new to. But I feel like I'm just to the like age, or I don't know. I just like crave sobriety lately. I just want to feel like so clear and crisp.
Oh, nothing like a bad trip to make you really appreciate sobriety. Like, wow, my normal state of consciousness is really great.
I'm not like endorsing or not endorsing these either way. I feel pretty neutral about it. It is true that they are comparable to doing regular mushrooms. Like it's the exact same as far as I can tell. And I would definitely say don't do 4 unless you're experienced.
I mean, I'm usually a proponent of the traditional clinical method, which is lying down, small. Blindfold. Actually, not necessarily even starting small. I think it's good to have a good like introductory experience, but with, music, uplifting music, blindfold. The research indicates that that is the best way to mental health stuff, since that's what we're all about these days.
But I'm like, you can't go wrong with doing a lower dose, and like if you have a nice garden you can go sit in.
Sure.
In front of your house. I was going to say go on a hike, but I don't even want to like get anyone in a spot away from home that's going to freak them out. But you know what I mean? Just you can never really go wrong with taking a microdose and just going and sitting on some grass.
Yeah, I don't think there's a danger in taking too little other than maybe like feeling disappointed and like, but then you can try again. Whereas, you can never take less if you do too much.
You can never unsee the horrors.
The DMT clown shriek laughing at you in the corner. Can't get rid of that guy for a few hours.
I feel like he's in me right now. He's wide awake. Inside of you, there are 2 wolves and the DMT clown.
Oh, man. On peyote, I was just like hurling into a bucket, and there he is in the bottom of the bucket, just like, and I was like, I'm so dumb.
No. It's funny because we've sort of like got a reputation for being, I guess.
A reputation, but not a brand deal for being.
Still no legal Delta 9 brando, which is fucked up. But like, I actually have less of an interest in substances than ever before lately.
Yeah, me too. My body needs a little break.
It really is just like once you get the message, hang up the phone,
Well, I need a little message because like I said, I've been dealing with a lot of anxiety, and microdose always really helps me with that, where I feel like sometimes when the world feels like it's like just right up in my face and strangling me, getting on like a microdose schedule just kind of pushes everything a little bit back, and I feel like I can look at it a little bit more objectively.
Swear to God, I'm having visuals.
You're having visuals?
Yeah, like I feel like I'm like seeing your vitiligo on your face like really vibrantly in a different way than normal. And then when I look at the table, it said on the website that like a pack was equivalent to like 4 grams.
Which is approaching a heroic dose. That's
just at the gas station. Spiritual experience, like not even a little leaflet inside.
They don't even tell you what kind of spiritual experience. We're dealing with like a Christo-normative society where their spiritual experience is like crying in church because of a beautiful thought, not like getting in touch with like ancient deities who are like, outside the normal realms of good and evil and ordinary perception. Like,
I feel like I'm experienced-ish with drugs, and taking 2 is making me feel like I'd like rather not be feeling it right now. I cannot imagine someone, especially just any 21-year-old, could just buy these and be like, oh, a nice alternative to alcohol at a party. Boom.
Oh, God, do not do these with alcohol. I've talked with a police officer. Sue me.
I made eye contact.
A cab, obviously. But he was saying the only like horrific mushroom cases that he's seen is when they get mixed with alcohol. So where, you get people spooning out their eyes and shit.
Yeah, I guess that is something that needs to be said. Don't do that.
Don't do it with alcohol. I honestly do it in a place where you can have just like a chill environment. I don't recommend doing psychedelics at like parties.
Definitely not.
I'm actually like amazed at people's ability to do just drugs generally.
Like at a concert.
People do so many drugs.
It's wild to me.
They'll be like, okay, I'm on Molly and on mushrooms.
Like at our craziest, we'd still be like in the woods, alone, in a safe space.
Yeah.
It's mind blowing to me that people will like go to a rave and I'll be like, have you tried mushrooms? And they'll be like, yeah, I tried them at a concert once. And I'm like,
wow.
That
we
would
are
send
built
me.
very differently.
Like you didn't have to like reparent your inner child at that concert. Like what were you doing?
Did you have good parents? What was the?
No, I know. I swear. Some people tell me about their mushroom experience and they're like, yeah, just like cool visuals. And I'm just like, wow, I'm so fucking jealous. There are not as many demons inside of you because I could never.
I feel like mentally pretty the same. It's just kind of like a general body discomfort.
I'm having like Like I truly am having visuals, Tana.
Wow. Well,
It's not like crazy. I know that's what scares me is that we're not even at a fucking
We're
hour.
at 50 minutes, so about.
So this is probably how it's going to be. Again, we are not necessarily recommending do your own research if you're going to do mushrooms. Obviously, we do have both seen a lot of value in mushrooms in our lives. But I'm like, just start with one. Just start small. You've got nothing to lose.
Yeah, you can always do more later. I'm pretty scientific isn't the right word, but what is the word? I like to know how much methodical that
You're
is.
You're a timer guy, and you
I
always
like
have been.
to know how long it's been, how much is being done. Do it with a sitter. In this case, we're sitting each other.
You guys are sitting us. Thank you for being here.
Who watches the watchers?
It's such a stupid video idea. But when I posted about these, everyone was like, you have to report back. It's just so funny, 20s versus 30s doing mushroom. And I feel lucky to have had so many psychedelic experiences in my 20s to where now I'm just like, I'm too old for this shit. Like, what do we do? Why are we back here? My brain is just like, why are we doing this again? Like, we know what this is.
See, I've been feeling like I need like a good solid trip soon. What's the most you've done, by the way?
Oh, mushrooms ever?
Yeah.
It's like probably like 3.5.
Okay.
I had to guess.
That's pretty sturdy.
I've done 3.5 a couple of times, and then I'd say most of my trips have been like 2.5.
That's good. That's solid.
Thank you, Tana.
I was anticipating much less, so I'm impressed.
Thank you. No, I've always been like it's just, again, I feel like I'm so like out of this phase of my life right now that it's like I have to remember that people are still interested in it, and it is still interesting and fascinating that psychedelics can have like the healing impact that they can have. But I did like most of my, I guess, self-therapy, whatever you want to call it, inner work on smaller doses of things like a quarter tab of acid or, I've always been a fan of like medium doses of things, like small to medium. Yeah. And to this day, I mean, it informs everything about life. But now I'm just like, if I'm not doing well, I do a yoga video and I'm like, God, that's like everything I needed right now. I truly just can't, I just like don't seek the chaos. So I'm just like so seeking less and less chaos as time goes on. And this to me is just like introducing chaos to my system, where it's like, it's fine. We know we're going to get through this. It's safe. But it's like...
See, acid's one where I'm like, you're not going to get me doing acid, even though like I would attribute it as like one of the most important things that's ever happened to me. Changed me more than and healed me and helped me more than anything else. And I'm probably not going to do it again. I mean, maybe would eventually, but
no, it's funny when you're
it's
like
just such a
in
commitment.
that period. Yeah, I used to hear that quote of like, when you get the message, hang up the phone. Who was it who said that?
Alan Watts.
Yeah, when I used to hear that, I was like, that's sad. I'll never change. But now I'm like, the message of this trip that's happening in my system right now is just like sobriety.
See, I'm like, Alan Watts probably could have used a few more psychedelics because he was on the phone all day, every day with alcohol being like, no, you hang up. No, you hang up. No, you hang up. And then he
like,
died
that seems worse.
of consumption on a boat. So
also, my uncle who just recently died, he said every time he would do LSD, the message was always stop drinking. And he never did. But like LSD would always tell him, stop drinking.
Oh.
And even towards the end, my uncle was like, yep, I really should have listened.
Damn.
But it's also, it's like, if people can't listen, there's a reason they can't listen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Ooh.
I don't think it's like a simple, you could have just made the choice to listen and not drink anymore.
Not be an alcoholic. I will say unmitigated reality is a lot sometimes.
It's true. I don't really like when people are too sort of like trying to be the judge and juror for what other people should do. I'm just if your soul is calling to you to be a stoner for a few years, like that's probably a phase you need to go through.
Or forever, there's people who have lifelong partnerships with it. And I'm like, great.
It's like, just look after yourself and like, don't get too lost in anything. And I think sometimes it's like really weird that we're doing a podcast right now or a YouTube video. Just sometimes you have to like play things out for as long as you have to play them out. And like the phase in between when your behavior like really changes is kind of longer than we would like. But that's just kind of how humans are. Like sometimes you have to like sit with the idea that like, I should probably not be using weed as much for like a year or two before you do.
Well, I definitely...
Not saying that to encourage any apathy though.
Yeah.
Like, you can do whatever you want. You can do whatever you set your mind to. Sorry I'm being like this.
I had a video get like 6 million views.
That's crazy that happened to you.
Yeah.
We've barely talked about it.
But because of it, every day there's just like a shit ton of notifications that are meaningless. It's all the same joke, like day after day.
What's the joke?
People being like, they already knew, because it's that old joke about roller skating that the hardest part is telling your parents you're gay. Okay, like, yeah. Anyway.
Having a viral video is like its own class of psychedelic or drug.
But it's made my social media just worthless. Like, I'm like, there's no point of checking this. So I don't spend, I haven't been spending any time on it because I'm like, I'm
like, listen, I need to have a sit down with just absolutely everybody and be like, I'm saying it now, do not send me reels. Do not DM me a reel. I swear to God, do not DM me a reel. If you know me personally and you truly think I need to see something, at a push, maybe text it to me. You can, if you are my best friend, if you are Tana, you can send me a reel. That is like the level of closeness you need to be with me. At this point in life, to send me a reel, I'm sorry.
I showed you that tiny little dog, but I did not send it.
Like if you would have sent me that, I would have been like, that didn't hit the bar, but you never would.
Yeah.
You are great at like, you always err on the side of like, you won't send a thing. I'm the opposite, but I'm trying to get better. I'm like, just respect people's time, Sam. Don't send people reels. It's the new phone call. It's becoming aggressive. So I'm glad we covered that in the podcast where we take these gas station
there's
mushrooms.
My weed addiction.
I'm having 4 visuals. I just want everyone to know that as I am participating in this huge, I'm staring at this packet and it's like becoming a butterfly and it's like,
damn.
Once again, I'm too old for this.
Too old for this trip.
God.
I was going to say, I feel like with the boundary disillusion, what we're seeing nationally is this like clenching and solidifying of boundaries. That's what fascism is like, this is who we are. We're the Christians and we're white and everyone else can eat dirt.
Just a complete denial of everything being interconnected. Because everything's interconnected, it's like if they face interconnectedness, they have to face their own grief. If they can continue like creating these like boundaries of separation, all they're really doing is like projecting their own internal stuff onto innocent people who don't deserve to be projected onto. And it sucks when it's people in power and they're like completely unconscious to the fact that they're doing that. But it's just like everything is just about these like fragile, in this case, men, it's usually men avoiding their own grief. Like that's Trump's like whole, it's just like a man avoiding his own grief.
I found this old Ram Dass talk from like the 80s or 90s where he was talking about Trump as a mythological figure. And I'm like, oh God, if he could have seen.
Like he knew Donald Trump existed, right?
Yeah. I mean, in the 90s was kind of his heyday.
It is crazy that this is at the gas station. It's really crazy.
That is really crazy. Also, Road Trip. That kind of implies that you could like do it in a car.
I know.
Which at a gas station seems a bit reckless. Like, no,
also,
am I wrong? Am I being a prude?
Sorry, I'm not really seeing any warnings on this label.
Like
that's
don't
like,
do it and drive, don't operate heavy machinery.
It just says warning and disclaimer. This product can cause delayed intoxication effects and may result in drowsiness. Refrain from driving vehicles or operating heavy. But it's like, that's pretty small. Do you know what I mean? You could easily see, like, and the reason they're able to do this is because supplements, I think it's because supplements just like don't have to go through like the FDA or anything in America. You can just do whatever you want. It's like most supplements that are sold don't even contain the thing that they're supposed to contain and shit like that.
And now with new Supreme Court rulings, they can just straight up poison us without any.
So even less. Yeah, the supplement industry was like, living that dream even before the Supreme Court ruling. There needs to be a leaflet. Like I'm actually like quite outraged that this doesn't at least come with a leaflet on fucking breath work or something. Give people you cannot just be like buckle up.
Spiritual experience.
You're giving people. God. I mean, it works, I guess, if it makes them deconstruct Chevron, but it might. I don't know if all roads lead to that. I could see a lot of people being very freaked out, even at the dose we took is moderate dose, sensory effects and joy. Sorry, but if you don't have experience with psychedelics, this is not just like a casual sensory effects and joy, you guys. It's like, no, you could be doing a bunch of like inner work and having to confront a lot of shit.
Isn't that how psychedelics tricked you? You just wanted a fun time.
That's exactly what happened to me. Yeah.
Like, oh, it'd be fun to see funny things. And
yeah, which I'm grateful to them for that. So I'm just like, I mean, they're basically telling you to do 4.
They're not telling you to do 4.
There's like really no warning that you shouldn't do 4. It just says buckle up.
Things are starting to get a bit more breathy and visual for me. Now the packet's doing shit.
The packet's been a butterfly the whole time we're filming for me personally. It just has the branding of just like a CBD gummy that won't do anything. But it's just like 4 mushrooms from the gas station. From the gas station that's funding genocide comes a spiritual experience.
God.
I'm like, make the Chevron executives take 4 gummies. See what happens.
Maybe I should get a blindfold and some earplugs.
Yeah. You seem...
It is crazy that to think somebody might do this just like while they're driving.
And once again, I really just want to emphasize that the amount we took is like on the packet as it's like low dose is 1/2 to 1, moderate dose is 2. And it just says sensory effects and joy. And it's not till 3 that it even suggests you'll experience altered perceptions. I'm like, no, you need to be putting on the packet 2 potential visual effects. Like, this is crazy. As much as I'm like a fan of a lot more people getting psychedelics into their system, I'm like, surely this is a corrupt way of doing it.
A
Like,
bit reckless.
I really feel like if we just go and like take care of ourselves for like half an hour even.
Okay.
Watch this space, you guys. I'm shutting this off. So that's how that's going. Oh, Tan, how you doing?
Woo.
It's Sunday.
Okay.
We did the mushroom trip on Tuesday, so...
Let this be a lesson for everybody, a cautionary tale for everyone.
We had very different experiences. I also feel like, yes, I mean, obviously don't plunge yourself into a mushroom trip if you're not in the right mindset, but we were in a safe space. Like we weren't reckless. You were maybe reckless with your emotional state doing mushrooms that day, but you were in a safe place with a safe friend. And there's something to be said for that. Mushrooms are unpredictable, you know?
Yeah, the primary rules of psychedelics is set and setting, right? That's mindset and the set that you find yourself in. And I definitely was not in the right mindset. I should have started with just 1 gummy instead of 2. I had the suspicion that they wouldn't be that strong because they're gas station gummies.
And we read the reviews and people seemed... We kind of got the sense that 2 would be
a fine time. But I was dealing with a lot of anxiety, still am, and it was very unwise to plunge myself into that mindset, and I got pretty angry at me and us for doing that during the trip, because I was like, I should have known better. I should have had more respect for myself than to try to do that for content on a day that I was not feeling it. So... It's kind lesson learned again.
It's a tough one because if you haven't had any psychedelic experiences, you can absolutely have a hard time, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like a lot of my most transformative trips in the past did involve having to confront my demons on steroids sort of thing, and that ended up being really useful. But do you feel like maybe the difference in this situation is like you already knew what you needed to do to kind of take care of yourself, and it perhaps wasn't like magnifying your struggles? Because there's kind of a degree to which it's just like, if you've never done mushrooms before, it can be harrowing to like experience that disillusion of reality, but that's kind of why you're doing them, right? Is to like gain that new perspective. But as you've already had so many psychedelic experiences in the past and kind of learned a lot through them, I feel like maybe doing it on a random Tuesday just felt kind of like useless
And also dangerous. I mean, there's kind of this mentality that psychedelics are the answer or will teach you sort of objective things. And that's not always true. They can be very, very helpful. And I do see them as a net positive in the world.
Yeah.
But they are essentially just psychic amplifiers. So whatever's going on in your brain, they're going to amplify. And if there's things that are simmering under the surface that you've never really explored, they'll bring them out right to the forefront, which for me, leaving Mormonism was really good. It helped me understand my sexuality that had been so squashed down, so much about the way that I interface with the world and now, which was really helpful. But in this moment, this last time, it just brought to the forefront, it just exaggerated all the anxiousness and fears and things that I was going through at that time in a way that didn't feel super productive, just felt painful and dreadful, really.
So it didn't feel like there were any sort of positive takeaways for you?
Well, like it was a good grief in that like I just had like a really, really intense grieving that you were there to witness and that Jared was there to witness for a bit. And, you know, it's nice to let a lot of emotion out, and it's nice to be like witnessed and held by friends. But would I have signed up for that? I don't know. There's probably a better way for me to do that.
Yeah. And I feel like you've always been especially sensitive to psychedelics.
Oh, yeah.
In a way that not everyone is.
No, yeah. They like just the littlest dose will knock me flat on my back. And
do you remember in the first part of the video where I was trying to be an advocate for just like go smaller, and you were like, no, you got to do 5 grams. You didn't say this, but you know, the 5 grams in the dark mentality. I'm
definitely not that mentality. No. My most significant trips were of a higher dosage, though I'd say most of like... Probably the most, like, mushrooms are kind of chaotic. Mm-hmm. Like, I've had a lot of neutral experiences with them that maybe ultimately were positive. They, like, you know, maybe made me a little bit more neuroplastic and helped me create more connections that wouldn't have neural pathways that didn't exist there previous. So I don't want to just write them, even the neutral or bad experiences off. Like,
I'm
sure
had a
there
bad
was something
that didn't help.
Positive about the experience. LSD has definitely been like way more consistently good and beneficial for me.
I feel like mushrooms will plunge me into sort of a darkness more easily. That again, yeah, like every mushroom trip has taught me something, and I think if you sort of have that mindset, then a lot of the time that can be true. But it does feel like LSD doesn't plunge you as dark.
They say that I forget who coined the phrase, but that LSD is like driving a rocket. And mushrooms is just like being strapped to a rocket. You don't know where it's going to go. It could take you anywhere. And LSD, you have a bit more control, but it's so long, and it really does make me feel, I mean, they all kind of make me feel icky and soupy. And I think I maybe needed a big trip and a good release, but I just wish I had been more intentional about it rather than, I mean, we did like set the intention in advance, and I did come in, but it was not in the way that I preferred to do psychedelics, which is going in with like a very specific set of things that I'm trying to think about or work through.
Not that you can always control the trip, but I think because of the nature of the gas station gummies, we just, if we would have normally gone into a trip doing 2 grams, we'd kind of know to expect a 2-gram experience can be pretty intense, right? But it's almost like because we went in with a bit of a question mark about how strong they were going to be, it threw us off more. But then I'm like, when I think back to my first experiences with mushrooms, when you're new to them, you kind of don't know how strong they're going to feel anyway, because you don't know what you don't know. It's such a like radically different state of mind to be in. Yeah. But again, I just feel like the feeling I got, I don't know if I said it in the first part, is just like, I'm too old for this. Or like, I've done too many psychedelics at this point to need this right now. Yeah. I mean, I had a pretty like decent trip, but I didn't really feel like I had like a ton of utility for the trip. Like it was a good reminder to me. Like I basically just went into this mode of, okay, I just need to mother myself right now. And I really focused on sensory experiences. So like I made myself a cup of chamomile tea, and I was like, I'm just going to be really present with this tea. And then so drinking that cup of tea became like a really blissful experience. And then I was looking at the trees, and that was really nice. But I feel like you weren't even able to enjoy any sensory things because you were so...
Oh, it was all bad sense. Yeah. My body felt disgusting. My mind felt disgusting. I felt like I was trapped in the Schopenhauer's Gnostic demiurge, just this like...
Not familiar.
Evil and like the world is essentially just like this dark failed thing that's just kind of rolling forth, and we have no control, and it was pretty grim there for a bit.
It seemed like it cut you off from the positive quite significantly.
I have enough experiences with psychedelics where I was just like, okay, like I'm just gonna like try to relax and just like witness the unfolding experience rather than being like, what can I do to get out of this? But that's what it was. It was just like, okay, like sitting down and witnessing the horrors and like, oh, yep. Just noticing all the like horrible sensations of my body, all the fucked up visions in my brain. And
But when I spoke to you a couple of days after, you said you were feeling a lot better, but was that just like relative to how you felt during that day? It wasn't as a byproduct of the trip?
Yeah, because my anxiety has been like this the last few weeks, where it just has these like really intense spikes that last for a day or a couple days, and then, you know, kind of mellows out. Maybe my body just like can't stay that intense for a while, and something triggers it. So, yeah. You know, maybe I'm sure there was something cathartic about being able to just like...
Yeah, having a good cry over, like, you cried a lot, which I think is that had to have done something good.
But I'd also been crying a lot beforehand and since, so.
Yeah. It's kind of a tough one because I could see someone in a similar situation gaining, like there being utility in that experience. Again, if you're not familiar with psychedelics, because it is true that a lot of there's obviously just suffering in the world that's unavoidable, but there also is a decent amount of suffering we all kind of create for ourselves through our internal storytelling and mindsets and all that. And I could see, like I've had experiences where I do go into a trip like anxious and not doing well. And then in the trip, I'm forced to confront those demons in a bigger way. But then in doing that, I'm able to sort of like see through the illusions that also exist within that suffering. I don't feel like it was necessarily, it was just a different situation. Mm-hmm. That's the thing with psychedelics, is they're just, you could have any type of experience. And that's kind of why people need to know what they're signing up for in that sense.
And even though it is a rocket, there are some calculations and pointing of the rocket that you can do beforehand. Mm-hmm. And I've used mushrooms very effectively, like recognizing that I have pent up emotional energy over something. And I'm like, I just need something to help me process this through. And have gone in with that intention and have cried and have journaled and, worked out what I needed to do and then felt much better afterward. Mm-hmm. But this just was not that.
I really just think always start small with everything. That was our mistake. We took one. We were originally going to take one, and then we were reading a few more reviews, and we thought, oh, well.
In for a penny, in for a pound.
As we're doing the video, we might as well kind of go. And it didn't seem like doing 2 was going to be some crazy experience. But it did feel like 2 grams of mushrooms, didn't it? Which is, I am still completely blown away that there is not so much as a leaflet in that packet. It's anyone over 21 can just go into a gas station and be like, I've always wanted to try mushrooms. And you could so see the average person would just be like, oh, this is 4, buckle up, spiritual experience. But it isn't like warning, consult your therapist, like nothing. Like there's not even a tiny little like information sheet about what to expect. You could so see just like the average 21-year-old, for example, being like, well, obviously I'm going to go for the spiritual experience.
Nothing about set and setting.
A 4 gram, and you could imagine people doing it on a night out or thinking like, I don't want to drink tonight. Maybe I'll just take these mushrooms. Or on a road
trip, as we mentioned.
I know, the fact that they're called road trip. I get the trip, but there should be no driving puns around them, like with the marketing of that product.
No.
It's really wild.
And very sketch that they don't tell you what the active ingredient is.
Yeah.
We did look and we did talk about
mix of legal tryptamines.
Yeah, but like, on the chance that they're putting Amanita in those. I know they have ones that are specifically marked.
Yeah, they're not. Amanita. It's not Amanita because,
But just kind of sketch.
No, so sketch. I went in kind of with we do need to put LSD in the water mentality. So I was like, maybe this will be a good thing. It'll probably throw some people off. Obviously mushrooms aren't good for everyone, blah, 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 all that. But I was like, it's still a net positive. It's dystopian, but still potentially really good that mushrooms are becoming so easily accessible. But after that, I'm like, it's completely unethical to not have at least a little booklet. It would cost them probably almost nothing to add in a little booklet with just like, because the packet was not honest about what you can expect. Do you know what I mean? Like for the dose we took, it said moderate, which first of all, if you'd never done mushrooms, that wasn't a moderate experience by any means. No. And then it just said like, sensory effects and joy. It didn't even say you would experience altered perception until 3 gummies. You definitely can experience even 1, people could absolutely experience altered perception. It's just insane. They need to explain more what you're in for. They need to be like giving way more instructions about like, make sure you're in a very safe place. Make sure
if you have a family history of mental illness, of schizophrenia, of any kind of psychotic disorder. Wild.
And the thing is like, you don't release a product like that without having a conversation about like, should we put in a little leaflet? They must have discussed it and decided no. And I'm like, for what reason would you decide no? It just seems like it's coming from people that don't care. I do think we got to respect psychedelics and the fact that they are, they're powerful tools and they're not for everyone. But I feel like sometimes people can be overly cautionary. And I'm like, I'm kind of glad that I stumbled into them, because if I hadn't, my whole life would be worse, realistically. Mm-hmm. And they did so much good for me. And I think it's one of those things where sometimes I do think if people truly knew what they were like, they wouldn't want to do them, but like they're still good to do, if that makes sense. Mm. So I feel like people can be a bit overly I don't want to say overly fear-mongering, because again, I want to respect the risks, but I'm like, I don't want to turn people off of them who may significantly benefit from them just because like the nature of a mushroom trip is that you are surrendering control. That's kind of like one of the major benefits of them, is that they force you to relinquish control, and you see all the ways that your attempts to seek control over the uncontrollable, like life, are like thwarting you and causing suffering. But just to give people so little information is like next level. Not even a QR code that like links to a video or like nothing. Just no resource.
If you
just
begin to have a tough time, here's some things you can do.
And a gas station is typically a place you are stopping at while driving.
Yeah.
And it's called Road Trip. So there is like, absolutely, it's kind of like priming people to be like, I'll just pop one of these while on this road trip.
And it's not like alcohol, so I'm not like driving under the influence. And 2 says I'm not even going to have sensory.
And you're like, it's legal, so how strong can it be? And there's no leaflet, so how strong can it be? Buckle up, buckle up. Strap in. I would do them again if I felt I, wanted a mushroom trip, like in terms of them in comparison to, eating physical mushrooms. I'm like, I definitely prefer the gummy experience a lot more. I had a decent trip. It didn't feel like necessary for me to have that trip, and I am just to the point in my life where I feel like I've had a lot of psychedelic experiences and will do them again in the future, but just like now's not really the time where I'm craving them. So even though it was a good time, it was a good reminder to me that I'm like capable of mothering myself through like challenging internal states. I did feel very in touch with my femininity and I guess like nurturing power in a lot of ways that felt nice. But one would have been probably more the experience we were looking for. Or none.
If that, I'm not even usually looking for a 1 gram experience. I don't know why I signed
honestly,
up for this.
Don't you think like microdosing like half a gummy could be a really nice, like the fact that they're so, like everyone doesn't have access to a drug dealer, the fact that it's legal.
There is a cool thing about how accessible that it is, but it feels...
I'm still kind of glad they exist for my own selfish reasons. I'm like, if I ever want to just have a little microdose day, I would definitely take half a gummy and see how that goes.
Yeah, but it definitely feels like they are not providing a necessary context for what the experience is or can be about. Yeah. And are kind of being willy-nilly with people. I mean, even the fact that 21, not to say that you by no means should do them before you're 25, but like that could be some really good counsel, is to wait till your brain is fully developed to do it. We know people who have persistent hallucinatory disorder as a result of doing psychedelics, where they are always,
I think I was 23 when I did them, and that felt good. Like I felt like it was for me personally.
But they are powerful tools, and when your brain is developing, they can just change the way that your brain develops. And there are a lot of problems with people. Like I listened to an interview, I think on who's the MIT professor who has the big podcast. Anyway, he was talking about how people who suffer with that usually have the experience of assuming that like nothing is real, like total derealization of the external world, or derealization of the self. Like I'm imaginary, I don't exist.
Normal
because
to
everything
have
is
during
just
the trip, but not constantly through
life. Oh God. So many people have been through intense psychedelic trips where like, oh no, I broke my brain. This is it forever.
Don't worry, you probably didn't.
And then you come back and you're like, oh, thank God, being sober is great. And wow, what a blessing to just have normal waking consciousness. But the reality is that there is a percentage of people who don't walk back from that. And that is something you need to be mindful of. And I would say that that's definitely more of a risk the younger that you are.
And middle school, you're just tripping all the time anyway. Like you do not need a psychedelic.
Middle school is not the time for doing any.
You don't know anything about
any
reality.
Psychoactive. I mean, I talked to this Native American man once about his experience, because he grew up doing peyote in the Native American church. And he said that as a kid, they just did it as like a ceremony, but he never felt anything from it until as an adult, he did acid. And then afterward, peyote affected him, which I thought was interesting. Yeah. But they had just grown up, I don't know, his like body was just used to it or had a tolerance, and it wasn't such a thing. And peyote is a different neurotransmitter too, and I don't believe that it's in the tryptamine family like mushrooms and DMT and ayahuasca.
I know we talked in the first bit of this video about like just how strange it is that now people can just buy this plant medicine completely removed from any of the shamanic traditions it sort of came about in. But it was interesting just like, seeing you in so much grief, and you're someone who's like familiar with grief work and you know how to process grief better than the average person. You've had more opportunities to be in community settings where you're processing grief. But I was just like thinking of, the average person who might stumble into taking these and the amount of grief that could come up, and then just them not having the infrastructure in their life to know what to do with that, and it just being completely destabilizing. And again, I don't want to like baby people too much. I think there's like, again, like the destabilization can be like a really positive part of doing mushrooms.
And an introduction into like integrated grief and in the necessity of like an ongoing grieving process and grieving rituals.
But I just think that's, it's got to be so wild for people to just be thrust into that. I was thinking about a lot of, my mushroom experiences were with you. So if I was going through, a big grief experience, I had a friend who I could process that with, and you were like well versed in psychology, and even though we were young, I was lucky to have you as a person I would often have trip sitting me or be with me. But there's a lot of people who it's not going to be like that.
Yeah, don't be taking it at a party with people who you may not have all your best interests or have the. It's good to be with like gentle people. Thankfully, mushroom or psychedelics generally kind of have a reputation of being easier on new people because it is such a new so experience.
I feel like when you first, we were talking about that the other day, but when you first do mushrooms, it's almost like you get more of like the giggling and the joy, and you just feel this like release that you've almost known was possible on some subconscious level your whole life. It's like the spiritual experience everyone's craving but never necessarily has in organized religion. It does feel like when I think about my earlier trips, I'm like, I did quite a significant amount and just had such a good time, but it feels like they give you like not always, but it feels like a lot of people experience the funner side of them first sometimes.
Yeah, mushrooms have almost never been fun for me. I think I had one trip with you early on that I would consider fun, where I just had like a bunch of interesting woods? No, we did them at my house one day, and then we ended up going swimming, and just like all the visions in my head as I was just like swimming underwater were really fun. But the rest of there's been other ones where like I really get into the mental palace, and like there is an internal space there that is very comforting to return to, that feels like my innermost temple. They're like, oh yeah, I'm at home here. And that's nice. But a lot of my mushroom trips have been just like heavy, real like processing grief, bringing up to the surface, intergenerational trauma that I was not fully conscious of, personal trauma that I was not fully conscious of, that kind of stuff.
Which doesn't sound like a super fun time for most people, like me, who didn't want to do mushrooms for that reason. But it really is amazing how if you confront what you're scared of, you're freer from it afterwards.
That one was really good. I mean, like, it was like finding that there had been this buried piece of shrapnel in my spirit, and removing it really hurt. But afterward, it has like helped me heal and be more aware. But sometimes it's just, white knuckling it until the end. So moral of the story, you can always do more. You can never do less. So I think Terrence McKenna was a fool for advocating everyone to do 5 grams of, dried mushrooms on an empty stomach. Like, he was a tall dude, and I don't think it's the same for everybody. So,
and you can get so much out of smaller doses that I'm just like, why 5 grams?
Yeah. I've never done 5 grams. The most I've done is 4. And that was so intense, where I did feel like I got to that place where my mind felt like there was something else speaking, that like logos. And it was just like hours and hours of like, you must be honest. These are the rules of the game. Oh, you must be honest. These are the rules of the game. You
what
must
were the rules
be
of the game?
honest.
Just be honest.
You must be honest.
Oh my God.
Over and
I wonder
over
if that's
and
like
over
specific to like you and your upbringing, that's like the deepest coded message. Or
it was a good
that's
message, but
I mean, be honest.
Well, because it showed me all the ways that, I mean, not that I'm like perfectly honest. It made me aware of all the ways that I'm not perfectly honest.
Perhaps with yourself more than anything.
With myself, with other people. And I don't know that that's always problematic. I've listened to a couple of things from Alain Botton recently. Is that how you say his name? Yeah, Alain de Botton.
If you guys haven't read A Course in Love, it's an incredible book.
And he talks about like the utility of dishonesty in the same way that like
Esther
gossip sometimes gets a bad rep.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, it's actually like a very powerful social function that's only been squashed by the patriarchy, who doesn't want women and people talking about things. I was became aware of the ways that I was creating misalignments with reality that were like playing out negatively, and that just by being trying to be as honest as possible, open as possible with myself and others, I was allowing myself to live more at ease and not having to worry about keeping up narratives or keeping track of narratives or dealing with paranoia of being caught.
Right.
I was, checking out organic groceries at the time and marking them as regular groceries.
That's okay. If you're shopping at
See,
Walmart
now
or Kroger,
steal from the corporations, but Mushroomy was like, do not steal from corporations.
Depends who it is,
that was for me personally, just because I'm a scaredy baby, and I was creating paranoia and fear in myself.
Yeah, okay. And now they do have really much better systems for tracking that stuff.
Yeah, so for me, it was like, I need
risk.
Yeah. I don't need to be taking the risk and creating that mental friction. And what were you going to say about Esther Perel?
Oh, it wasn't really relevant. I'm just echoing that she's also talked about how Americans will like put honesty on a pedestal to a fault. Obviously, honesty is a good quality. We love honesty. But it is like, it's certainly true that people can get like scrupulous about honesty and
or cruel about honesty, where they're like, I'm just telling you how it is and what it is, and it's like, that's not really the superior value at this time.
Exactly. Yeah. So honesty is like kind of a dance that we all have to do with mindfulness, I suppose. And we're all allowed to have private thoughts and a private life, so to speak, to some degree or another, depending on what agreements we've made with people.
Yeah.
So I think the takeaway is no need to jump in the deep end. Just dip a toe in if it's something you're wanting to explore. Yeah,
wait till have a setting where you're safe, where you have a person nearby, not as a guide. I think it's foolish to assume that someone can guide you through that experience, but someone just there to so that you can have the psychological comfort of not having to worry of is the stove on, or is somebody going to show up and I'm going to have to talk to somebody? Is there going to be a fire? Just someone who you can put all those worries onto them, and they can, if they can check in if you need.
But I do think it can be helpful to have a loving, emotionally attuned person there to kind of, process with. Like with you, that's been so helpful for me in the past, just being able to talk about what's going in my brain. And you're someone who will ask thoughtful questions, but without trying to impose a worldview on me necessarily. That did help shape trips of mine in helpful ways, to just have a person be curious in kind of a wise way.
Yeah, and if you need some good ideas, the MDMA Therapist Handbook has a list of questions.
I love those questions.
That therapists can ask patients during the MDMA trip, and I think those could be really valuable during a psychedelic trip as well.
And you can get so much out of just microdosing and journaling by yourself, and those questions, for example. You really don't have to go balls to the wall with a moderate dose.
It's funny because we're kind of somewhat seasoned in all this. But then, I'm sometimes around people who have no psychedelic experience whatsoever, and I'm like, y'all need some serious cognitive upheaval.
No, I know. That's why I'm
what?
Yes, let's be cautious, but let's also, we are obviously fans of the impact they've had on our lives.
Just, set yourself up for the best experience possible is what it comes down to. Do your research. Give yourself a good setting with good, protections in place. Have a plan in place of not that it can be, it can be fluid, and you can. There's something beautiful, especially in the early experiences. If you're outdoors in nature, the exploration and sort of that renewed childlike wonder, where you're looking at the world with fresh eyes and allowing yourself to explore and. All that. That's really good too, but it's also nice to have a little structure to the chaos. Yeah. You don't want to be running into the local police precinct on accident because you're tripping too much in the wild.
We're at the top of this mountain, and then a police car's rolling up to our Airbnb. It was actually going to
our first mushroom trip.
Yeah. Even though we were just innocently playing in the snow, I mean...
Oh, I saw the cop car pull up, and I was like, I'm never coming down from this mountain. I live on this hill now. This is the hill I will die on, literally. I'm just a hill person now. Let me sink in and stay here forever.
You've always had different types of paranoia to me. I can't explain it, but you've always been a paranoid drug taker, in the sense of being worried that the cops are going to come, or in the beginning when you started using weed, you would get really scared of my cats. And I feel all of my paranoia is kind of the thing you just, I don't remember what person you referenced, but just core like things that will come up under paranoia is just like life is inherently bad and like this is all should not be happening. It's just like a hellish mistake.
What's the word? Lecherous. That's the word. Everything just felt lecherous under that trip. Like life was just just tearing everything away and like creating you just to torture you and destroy and disturb you.
We are just hosting all these bacteria
that are just
their feet,
vying to destroy us. And oh, God.
Just because you're conscious doesn't mean that your life has any kind of meaning or worth per se.
And that is something that can happen to people on psychedelics, is like all of a sudden being like, oh, life has no inherent meaning or worth. And that can be really a grim. For me, it was a beautiful, like,
yeah, me too.
Oh, thank God.
Not necessarily at first. It was harrowing at first.
At first, I kind of had that like intellectual awareness and an emotional heaviness, the death of God, living in the wake of that. But then on LSD, it kind of created this universal sense of meaninglessness that connected me to everything. Maybe I need to do more acid and fewer mushrooms.
There's just so many things that are so personality dependent. Leaving Mormonism, like some people can kind of bounce back quite quickly and they're like, oh God, what a relief. It's not true. I can move on with life. And then some of us are just like plunged so deep into the depths of nihilism. And I feel like there's things you can sort of realize on mushrooms that to some people can be integrated quite quickly and usefully. And then for other people, it's just like they've never even been able to imagine that might be a truth of life, and so therefore it's like so impossible to live with. And that's like, what do you do about that, you know? I do think you got to find people to look up, like find people whose words comfort you, or people who, you know what I mean? Like it's really helpful reading like spiritual teachers you look up to if they're the right sort of people.
Oh yeah, I've just been on, Ram Dass has been holding the ship together for the last couple of weeks.
Good.
Timothy Leary, who I do not wholesale sanction by any means, but had that quote at least attributed to him about the necessity of finding the others. And I think psychedelics do instill that desire for you to find that like sense of sangha, of people who like understand the things that you're grappling with and the world as you see it or understand it in light of this new experience.
I was going to say that like that's one effect mushrooms can have, is like radically shifting the types of people you want to be around, because it is just such a, I suppose just transformative experience, and things that felt fine before, suddenly you're like, hang on a minute, this is like so much shallower than I need to thrive. And you sort of can sense that all along in some ways. Like a lot of people feel dissatisfied, but it's hard to put your finger on why. Not that it's necessarily one thing.
Psychedelics do like complexify life, I feel like, or at least shed light on the complexities, where I feel like so much of our culture, looking at it now, seems just this like facade, this cartoon of like, oh, this is how it works. God loves us. He created us in 6 days. And now we just have to work every day and buy the right Cadillac and then we'll be saved in heaven. Like, and it's like, well, actually life is way more, like way more complex than we can even fathom. And you could spend the rest of your life learning and doing psychedelics and thinking deeply, and you will never even approximate true apprehension. And it's something that Terrence says. It's like, we're not here to understand, we're here to appreciate. And I feel like psychedelics do give us a lot of appreciation for the process of dealing with complexity.
Yeah, insane to think that a primate could understand reality.
Sorry, I just feel like I'm a quote machine now. But as Campbell says, I don't think he said this about psychedelics, but maybe about psychosis, or, you know, that water that the psychotic person drowns in is the water that the mystic can just float in. And so when you're plunging yourself into these truly like psychotic, destabilizing, mind-altering,
just like a dissolution of reality,
it is good to be prepared with some tools. Like, you know, there's a reason people get into meditation and breath work and yoga after doing psychedelics, because you're like, oh, like, just having this as a tool for regulating my nervous system in these spaces is so important. And also afterward, like just in day-to-day living. It's
wild how little we connect to our breath. The breath is such a powerful tool for regulation, but it's just so easy to be going through stuff and for it to not even occur to you. Like, I should take some conscious, slow, deep breaths right now, because that's like one of the easiest ways to calm a nervous system.
Totally.
And we almost see it as like too simple of a solution. It couldn't possibly help. It's even patronizing for someone to suggest it, but I mean, it is useful. It's not going to fix everything always, but
in these bouts of anxiety that I've had, it's literally just like, because I can get so like obsessively like ruminating, just like, oh, this bad thing that's going to happen, this bad thing that's going to happen, these bad things that are going to happen, everything bad is going to happen. And I have to just like center my being here and just focus on the process of breathing. And it does like make me realize like, oh, I'm living in these abstractions that may or may not be real. Like the worst really could happen. The worst happens all the time. And we do live in a fucked up, but the best does happen too. And me worrying about it isn't necessarily going to change it. If there's things I can do, that's great. But like just obsessively worrying isn't going to shift it. And granted, I can't just tell myself to stop, but trying to focus on the breath has been really, it like anchors me in the moment and in reality and in like the actual living animal of my body rather than in abstractions of the mind. Because thoughts can be like a constructed prison for ourselves and a torturer of ourselves. And I think generally, myself especially included, need to have, this is where Ram Dass comes in, of quieting the mind, opening the heart. Like that has to be a process, because our minds, especially as Western people who are just fully invested in our thought forms, modern people, of all kinds and all places, do have to like learn how to like ease up on the reins of the mind and return our energy and the lived experience of our being back into our bodies.
I think that's why so many people can get like really, some people will take psychedelics and just become really zealous in a new way. Whereas I think we talked about this in our Shannon Blake video, but like one of the benefits of psychedelics for me have been like learning to hold thoughts more loosely and, recognizing that all thoughts and beliefs are just, they're just thought forms in your mind. Even if something is like 90% likely to be true, it's still it's still just like a concept in your brain or a thought in your brain. Yeah. But I feel like a lot of people get zealous in different ways when they do psychedelics because they still haven't learned to have that like detachment between their thoughts. And like they're not able to sort of wake up from the dream of your thoughts and beliefs being reality yet. So they're like, oh, well, I felt something really strongly while on this drug, so therefore, and then, that's their new religion that they're sort of gung-ho for. But I feel like luckily I had the types of psychedelic experiences that made me more aware that anything I think should be held very loosely.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm very wary of people who have new insights about them, in a past life, I was King George VIII, and I learned that on a psychedelic experience. And I'm like,
so sick.
It could have been a very interesting and beautiful experience that isn't actually literal. It doesn't actually mean that.
Yeah, it's like, let's unpack that. What do you get from that? Like, what do you think that says about you? Like, go deeper, Just even if you fully buy into the fact that you're a king in a past life, okay, what does that mean for you?
I do appreciate, and I've talked about this in other videos, the way that my paranoid delusions have revealed to me the like precarious state of thought and feeling, and that it's like, oh, just because I know something is true in my body, I know that they're coming to arrest me right this second, and that's not necessarily true. And so it's given me a lot of like breath in looking at my thought forms and being, so even now in the thralls of anxiety, I'm like, there's still a part of me that knows, like, just because my body feels this way, like, doesn't mean that it has to be that.
Everything's temporary.
Though when you throw yourself into a 2-gram road trip, gas station gummy trip, boy, does it feel real. And, Jared, do you want to come talk about your psychedelic experiences? Please welcome special guest Jared Anderson.
No, I don't want to talk about it.
What might be fun, not that I'm presuming that people will, but if anyone has any questions they want us to answer about our psychedelic experiences, we could do a little bonus episode on Patreon.
Oh, yeah.
I think that could be fun, just to keep the conversation going. And also so we can hear about other people's experiences in a bit more of a closed space.
Yeah.
If people don't feel, as comfortable commenting on a public YouTube video. I always feel very in touch with like my femininity on mushrooms. And I felt like the reason my trip was so good the other day is I've really like come a long way in that sense. Like I feel like when I first started doing psychedelics, I had a very wounded feminine, so to speak, and was kind of like excessively masculine, obviously just using these as concepts, not applying them to men and women per se. But yeah. I feel like I've like integrated my feminine so successfully over the years, and now it's like a true source of joy. And like I had this moment the other day where I was like just thinking about how much like joy it brings me to like make people food or just to like cook or whatever.
Thank you for making me
And to
dinner
just-
while I
yeah,
was
you're
spiraling
welcome.
and for massaging my toes. That kept me grounded.
Well, I just listened to a podcast about this like autistic genius who came up with this squeezing device because apparently she figured out that like cows, when they're under stress, they would put them in this like squeezing device to calm them down. So she made one for autistic people. So I was like, I'm going to squeeze Tanner's. Yeah. So I was like, I'm going to squeeze him because maybe that will help.
It did help.
So thanks Binchtopia for teaching me that. But anyway, the feminine.
How much you enjoy making food for people.
I just had this thought. The thought was basically, I felt really grateful to be a woman because I just feel like very comfortable with my womanhood. I started thinking about how even in war zones or even in sort of the hardest situations in life, there are women making meals for people. And there's something like kind of beautiful about that in the moment. Just, I think like sometimes we all feel this big urge to go out and like make a big impact in the world. And, you know, I'm obviously, it's not one or the other, but I just felt like really grateful for like the simple ways I can sort of contribute to the world around me, even if it's like making Jared dinner or making dinner for friends or, you know, it extends beyond cooking, but just like the joy of like nurturing people basically and of being in a like grounded enough place in my own self to be able to do that and like to have a softness I didn't used to have before psychedelics. I took psychedelics at like 23, so it's also young, and I feel like you come into your womanhood as you get older. But yeah, I don't know. I was just like, even in the craziest situations in the world, there's like women making food for people that they love. And I don't know why that was just such a beautiful thought to me. Hi, just editing, and I hope this is obvious if you watch our videos regularly, but I'm not implying that being nurturing or cooking are like inherently woman things. I'm just talking about my own relationship to myself and my femininity, and there's no gender shoulds that I believe in. So obviously fine to be a woman who hates cooking. Men can cook just as much as women can cook. It's just that in a lot of cultures, women have been the ones sort of socialized to be taking on that role. But yeah, don't take any like gender shoulds from anything I said. It's easy to just like, especially when you're anxious, to just think so macro and then to just feel completely powerless and hopeless. And
you see that with a lot of men who like leave the Mormon church, do psychedelics, and they're like, we need to start the real religion.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm like, or
just calm down for several years.
Just
first.
be a little bit more kind to the people you're...
They instantly need like a project that's going to change the world. And I'm like, you're in no place to be changing the world right now, sir. Like, just settle down, process with yourself for a while. A lot of the things that we can do to change the world are micro and they are local. And it's so easy to overlook like our own sphere of influence. I heard someone say the other day that we get anxious when our level of awareness is greater than our sphere of influence to help. And I was like, that's quite a good way of putting it. Do you know what I mean? Like you get so stressed about, for example, the election, you know, the current political situation, but it's like, what can I do? You know, very little. You got to not let that anxiety cloud your ability to make an impact in your sphere of it. Look at all these vegan snacks Jared. You brought us.
Wow. That is a conscious man there.
Well, this has been great. Do we wrap up the video here or just try and do some crisp ASMR? Are we going to go read Tennis Shoes on Patreon now or are we going to wait till Tuesday?
I think we should do it. We're here.
We're here.
We're queer. We need some beer.
Yeah. We're ready to go through the portal again. It's been too long.
It has been.
And it is heating up. Like they've been captured by, can't even remember who, but they are captured. And the little sister is supposed to be a wife to the king. She's got to get out.
It's Mormonism all over again.
Goth's now on our shit list, which we never expected. Things are really turning around over in Mormon Narnia. So we'll see you guys there. You can also just support the channel on Patreon, even if you don't want to watch that content. Yeah,
or send us a donation through Venmo or PayPal. PayPal is elfontheshelf@gmail.com or Venmo.
Someone got mad at us for like, because I list my personal Venmo. We need a self Venmo, obviously, but like they were like implying that it was like more like dishonest for some reason. I'm just like, sorry, we don't have a Venmo yet. We just share everything. We're just the two of us. So
people vastly underestimate how business oriented we are.
I know.
We're like, it's a slog just to get in the same room and talking to mics together, let alone set up a business.
And I feel like our crime has been being too transparent. Love you guys. Thanks for joining. If you have any experiences with gas station mushrooms or psychedelics of any kind that you want to share in the comments, we'd love to hear. Either cautionary tales or success stories or somewhere in between. Just smash that comment section with keywords, you guys. The number of people that leave comments saying for the algorithm is so nice.
Very inspiring.
Yeah.
Very touching.
touching it.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.
Hope you all have a wonderful life.
Bye. Bye.